Good morning, everyone. Jesse Webb here with Traders Pro. Let's talk a little bit about the market conditions currently. It looks like futures are going to be up just a little bit this morning. Our conditions have not changed a whole lot, obviously, since yesterday. We're still in our downtrend. Market conditions still bearish. Excuse me. We are at the extreme edge of that trend, which means that here typically we're 5% to the downside or to the upside, but we're 18% off of that measurement here. So we're definitely extremely oversold right here. It doesn't necessarily mean that we can't go lower, but we're at a location where we could see some kind of a relief rally or a bounce right here. We've got on the short-term sentiment indicators we're sitting at. I mentioned in our update yesterday that one of the things I would like to see is I'd like to see this sentiment number a lot lower for a significant bounce right here. These two things right here, the breadth levels are very extreme, and we're definitely seeing that. So what this means is that we've got momentum that's declining. We've got sentiment, which is still good, which means people are not as bearish as they probably could be or should be, and momentum is declining, and there are a lot of stocks that are in major downtrends right now. So we've got a lot of work for that to reverse and come back up, but that's what happens in some of these deeply oversold conditions as we get bounces, but nothing to get too excited about. They're typically bear market rallies. If we move down here just a little bit and look at where we're at currently, we've got momentum. Again, momentum was extreme. It's moving this other direction now. It's moving back up this direction across this slider bar, and so there's still some risk of downtrend being intact, which is probably going to be the case here. Breadth, as I mentioned, is deeply oversold in that extreme, which means this is not sustainable. It typically will bounce the other direction. So once we get into these extreme areas, those are areas. That's why this turns green, is because even though it's in a major downtrend, it's in a location where it's probably going to bounce this direction, although it could get clear over here, as we've seen many times in the past. But it is pretty low right now. Sentiment, again, also just still sitting high. There's still some optimism out there that may need to be flushed out of the market to really create a good solid bottom. Brett, the buy-sell ratio, we're also still sitting right, creating some possible divergence now, which has typically happened in the past. A lot of times when we get these extreme levels here and here, we get the next bounce, which is a little bit lower in terms of the number of buys and sells that we've got inside the database. So this is currently at 512 buys, 3,400 sells, 3,400 stocks in downtrends, versus here you could see 159 stocks versus 5,000 sells. So once those get to those real extreme levels, you start to get contrarian or value type, traders, investors, counter trend, short covering, looking to come back in and fill the market. On sentiment, we're still just not extreme, not down to these lower levels. We're seeing that on volatility. We've popped clear up here, and now we're potentially getting some divergence on volatility as well. So we're in a location, as I mentioned, where we could get a bounce. A couple things to look for on that, also on the index link here. If you look for, these are some of the main major indices where you can be looking at something like mid cap and small cap, even just the Dow and the S&P 500, and you can see the number of stocks that are in here. In the S&P 500, only 36 stocks are in uptrends or up buy signals. The rest are in downtrends. So that alone is the trend direction. That needs to be our bias still, is the downtrend. But again, because we are getting towards that extreme range of bearishness and oversold condition, there may be an opportunity for a bounce right here. So one of the things in Traders Pro to look for is, we'll sort through this information. You can just simply click on some of these stocks and see, here's the Dow. So of the Dow 30, there's 2 stocks in the buy range. Obviously, it's going to be medical and oil, or energy and pharmaceuticals. Those are kind of the current uptrends right now. So we're seeing XOM moving higher. We're seeing Merck also moving higher. Those trends are starting to shift. So not a lot in terms of some of these other stocks, but those are some things to be watching for. Also, you can look for some of these hold ranges when you've got, let's go back to this Dow Jones industrials, and you've got 6 stocks in holds. Those are stocks that are potentially starting to move up and starting a new uptrend, and you can look at the names here. And a lot of times this can be an interesting barometer to what's happening in sector rotation, kind of what stocks people are actually interested in here that are starting to move. Walmart, Travelers Insurance, Caterpillar, Home Depot, Chevron. Again, yesterday we talked about consumer staples, and these are, insurance typically is pretty recession proof. Walmart typically, fairly recession proof. Caterpillar maybe not quite as much, and Home Depot as well. Sometimes if you get, companies there where there's just not a lot of infrastructure type building or need for large capital equipment, or Home Depot that is simply, nobody's making add-ons to their home or things like that. They kind of tighten up a little bit. But let's take just a quick look and see on those, kind of see where those trends are at. So this is a hold signal, which means that it is a stock that has just moved. It's just potentially starting its uptrend. It's got some support right here. The trend had started to shift down. And again, the trend can shift. It can go from here. Sometimes it can look like this when it shifts and really fall off a cliff. Other times it can, kind of find some support and then move back the other direction, move back to hold, and then ultimately try and start. And so this may be an early indication of which stocks could start to be breaking out right here if you look for some of those stocks that are inside of that hold range. Let's see, that was Walmart. Let's look at Traveler here as well. This is also, again, this is a really nice pattern right here when you have this downtrend shifting back up into this zone. Plus you have this uptrend and then this counter trend with a little buy zone bar right there. So a quick little way to be able to look for some stocks that are potentially moving and relatively soon. If you haven't upgraded to the full Traders Pro Premier Suite, I've got a link for you below to be able to access that. And happy trading today.